Hi guys and ladies, welcome back to another video. Today I have a very special comparison video, and not special because you know, I'm some sort of genius guru reviewer or anything. No, this is special because of the juice. And this video was going to happen one way or another at some point in the future, but the reason that it's happening today is because a couple videos back I did a perfumer's portfolio video on one of the best father-son duos of all time, probably the best father-son duo of all time, Jacques Polge and Olivier Polge, or as I'm learning in French class, Jacques Polge. And, you know, they're a father-son duo that they've done many great things, and I talked about some of them in that video. I talked about the beauty of keeping fragrances like number 22 current, or keeping fragrances like Cuir de Russie current, or all the things that they have to do along with new releases. And there's one that I completely forgot to mention because I don't have a full bottle. I only had a decant, and it was sent to me very kindly by my good friend, my BFF in the fragrance community, Mr. Rich Mitch. This is Antaeus Sport, which is one of the most obscure fragrances you could imagine. And I think it was, well, we'll get into some of the details here, but let me just tell you what it is. It's a sport flanker of the great Antaeus. Now, this bottle of Antaeus that I have is probably 20 years old or so. It's 5501 is the batch code, if you're into that stuff. But it's definitely at least 15 years old. I think it's closer to 20 years old. It does have the silver atomizer, which is what you want. It's basically like the silver shoulders on Kouros. Silver atomizer is like the silver shoulders. And this came out in 1981. This is one of my favorite fragrances of all time. I have a big 100 ml backup bottle of this. And this Antaeus Sport came out, I'm sorry, did I say 1985? Antaeus Sport came out in 1985. Antaeus came out in 1981. The best year in perfumery as far as I'm concerned. And what this is exactly what the name says. It's a sport flanker. I have some, let's see, 7-hour dry downs of each. I'm going to do fresh sprays because I want to experience the opening again. We've got sport on the left hand, okay? And we've got regular Antaeus on the right hand. God, I love these fragrances. I absolutely adore Antaeus. It is so me. It's me in a bottle. I'll tell you something that came up while I was talking to one of my subscribers. I won't say any names because I don't know if he wants me to say his name. But he mentioned that there were certain groups of people that wore certain fragrances. And he's an older guy who lived and experienced this. And he said that Antaeus was worn by a group of people in the 80s that he just never really associated with. And so even though he loves the fragrance, he couldn't wear it because of memories of that time when he was alive. Now, I wasn't alive in 1981 when Antaeus came out, and I was 0 or just born when Antaeus Sport came out. By the way, Antaeus Sport lasted literally a year, and they discontinued it. We'll get to that later on. So I have no pre-existing, you know, thoughts about this fragrance. I can approach it from a completely blank slate. Whatever group of people wore this fragrance in the old days has no opinion of the way I see the fragrance. I just love the fragrance for what it is. So I guess I'm at a little bit of an advantage to that, you know, when you look at it from that frame of view, because you know, if you were around in the 80s, you might have some preconceived ideas about Antaeus, and I have none of those. So I just love Antaeus. So let's talk about the differences, okay? And as you can see, as usual, I made notes. So let's start with the basics. This is one of the best sport fragrances I've ever smelled. There was a sport, almost like a sport push in the mid-80s. Everyone wanted to put out a sport fragrance. Lacoste put out a sport fragrance, Lacoste for Men, the original. Boss put out one of my favorite sport fragrances of all time. I love Boss Sport. Antaeus put out a sport fragrance. Paco Rabanne put out a sport fragrance. So it was the in thing to do, okay? And in a very un-Chanel-like way, they put out this fragrance, Antaeus Sport, and they immediately turned around and discontinued it. The bottle, by the way, just so I don't have a bottle to show you, but hopefully I will have one soon. I think I secured a bottle of this rare beast. I knew I had to as soon as I smelled this. It looks exactly like Antaeus bottle, identical, except on the back it literally says Sport Cologne. That's it, in a little sticker. So I think Antaeus maybe learned some things about what a flanker should and should not be. Because I think people, this didn't sell well, obviously, or else they wouldn't have just discontinued it after a year. What they tried to do is almost like if you took any person out on the street and said, hey, make a sport flanker of Antaeus. That's exactly what Jacques Polge did. They amped up the citruses in the green notes, and they amped down what I would call the... Well, actually, I'm not even going to say I would call it. I'm going to say that there is, first of all, there's no notes on Antaeus Sport on Fragrantica. There's not even a thing. This fragrance doesn't even exist on Fragrantica. On Parfumo, there is a place for it. You can click on Antaeus Sport, but there's no note tree. The only place that has a note tree is Base Notes, okay? And on Base Notes, the very first review is done by probably the best written reviewer on any platform. On Base Notes, his name is Varanus Radari, and he has that red dragon with the glasses on his nose. And he's a legend as far as I'm concerned. He commented on one of my haul videos, either the first one that I ever uploaded on my channel or the second one that said largest haul. But he uploaded, he made a comment just a week or two ago. Absolute legend. I love that guy. He's so, the way he writes and the detail is, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air. And he was the one that said that the brown notes in Antaeus Sport are turned down. And what he means by brown notes are things like myrtle, coriander, beeswax, you know, the stuff like that that makes the regular Antaeus feel a little bit more brown, in the sense that, think about the resinous notes for Antaeus. There's well, let's do the note tree. Maybe that'll help. So the regular Antaeus note tree is bergamot, coriander, lime, clary sage, myrrh, lemon in the top. And then the base, or the mid, is basil, jasmine, rose, thyme. The base is castoreum, oak moss, labdanum, and patchouli. So what is turned up in the original Antaeus and down in the sport version is the labdanum. There's also this beeswax note that you get in the original that you don't get in the sport version. So the labdanum is increased and the beeswax is increased. And it also feels like maybe that the rose is a little bit darker and amped up on the original. Now, the sport version, bergamot, lemon, artemisia, peppermint, pimento. Immediately you notice no myrrh. There is peppermint, pimento, and artemisia. 3 notes missing. And that peppermint is very important. When I first sprayed it, I didn't look at the note listing. I just wanted to give my nose a fresh take, if you will. And that peppermint was bothering me because I was trying to put my finger on what it is, and as soon as I saw it, it clicked. So peppermint, pimento, artemisia. The heart is rose, pepper, mace, and jasmine. Mace is a new note. The base is leather, vetiver. Vetiver is a new note. Sandalwood, patchouli, and oak moss. Okay, so amped up citrus notes, which is what you would expect in a sport fragrance. Amped up green notes, which is also kind of what you would expect. But one thing that shocked me is I was absolutely blown away that the castoreum in this is not turned down. You would almost think that, oh, maybe the castoreum would be, you know, reduced in a sport flanker. No, the castoreum is there. In fact, this is a 20-year-old bottle. It's not the original from the 80s. I have the original where the EDT is on top of the Chanel, and I think there might even be more castoreum in this and the sport flanker. That blew me away. I was not expecting that at all. And it smells as if they stuffed the sport flanker with all kind of herbs. Anything you can imagine. Clary sage, basil, thyme. I mentioned the mace and pimento and artemisia, but it almost feels like they, you know, took the labdanum and the beeswax, and there's even like this, even though it's not listed, Antaeus, the original, gives off this ghost incense note, and it's almost like this ghost incense, beeswax with castoreum and labdanum and the myrrh. The myrrh is extremely important in the original. In fact, you realize how important the myrrh is when it's not here, because just removing the myrrh, in my opinion, is a huge difference. However, because the myrrh has been removed, this almost feels, now this is from Varanus Radari, but I agree with him. It almost feels like it's a little bit smoother. And so strangely enough, it almost feels like it's smoother and in a way well blended. Blended better. Shockingly. Now this is a unicorn, okay? And it's a unicorn not because, you know, it was a 1-year deal. It was like this point in time and poof, it was gone. And so because of that, people tend to hoard bottles of this stuff. There's a huge, there's a very niche following of Antaeus Sport. Some people like it more. I don't know if I would say I like it more, but I would say I absolutely love Antaeus Sport from just an initial wear. It's my kind of fragrance, but you know I love the stuff from the 80s anyways. And the other notes that I made here is that he also mentioned that jasmine hedione was uplifted in the fragrance to try to make this very heavy masculine fragrance a little bit more wearable in the warm weather. Honestly, I would wear either of these anytime, any place. I love them both. But comparing them today side by side has been almost a little bit of a really interesting experiment for me because you know, originally when I had a chance to buy Antaeus Sport, I said, no, I don't want a sport flanker of Antaeus. I want my Antaeus to be dirty with castoreum and resinous. And after actually wearing it side by side, I am really liking the sport flanker. It's not as resinous. It's a little bit more uplifting. And this is why this Varanus Radari guy is such a legend, because he says that it almost feels as if someone was putting the screws to Jacques Polish to make a flanker, and so he just did the most obvious thing you could ever do. He amped up the citruses and maybe even some of the green notes. And he turned down the, I mean, almost like he didn't go by his nose. He went by what the formula should say you should do with the Sport Flanker. And I completely agree. It feels that way. But because it's 1985, they didn't turn down any of the castoreum. And that has completely blown me away. I was not ready for that at all. I was expecting something that was almost missing the castoreum, and it's not missing it at all. This is an animalic sport fragrance. Absolutely stunning stuff. I'm so happy I was able to procure a bottle or 3. And, you know, this is a unicorn, obviously. So this kind of content for YouTube is not, you know, it's not going to be digested for the masses that watch YouTube fragrance videos. They want to watch whatever the new Versace fragrance is, or whatever the new Creed is, or whatever their thing is, whatever their new Parfum de Marly. I'm talking about a comparison video between Antaeus from 1981 and Antaeus Sport from 1985, which has been discontinued for so long, and it's so random that most people don't even know it exists. But I think that Jacques Polge learned some things. Go read that review by Varanus I was telling you about. It's a perfect breakdown. And since I've only had this on my hand today, I can't really tell you how it acts in different weather. I can't tell you longevity, although I almost feel like this lasts just as long as this, if not longer. The Sport Flanker may actually even last longer, but there is something that is just so unbelievably beautiful about that myrrh opening. I mean, the myrrh hits you almost right away on the original Antaeus. And if the first time I smelled it, I thought it was all castoreum. When it first hit my nose, I thought, oh my God, the castoreum in Antaeus. And it definitely is castoreum in this version for sure. But it's that aromatic piece, clary sage and stuff like that, with the myrrh that really gets it going. And then you get the rose and everything else that comes with it, the labdanum, beeswax, you know, stuff like that. When it's missing, though, you can tell it's a flanker of Antaeus. Absolutely, you could tell. But that myrrh is, to me, one of the biggest, you know, missing pieces of the puzzle. They added some stuff, like I said, in the Sport Flanker. They added the herbs, the mace, the pimento, the artemisia, but they also took some stuff away. And the stuff that they took away is just as important to the composition of Antaeus Sport, in my mind, as the stuff that they added. So, you know, Jacques Polge kept the DNA, and he made an amazing fragrance. And it's a shame that they didn't just stick with it, you know, because in my video, I said that it was absolutely amazing that... Here, let me grab these real quick so I can tell you what I was talking about in my Jacques Polge video real quick. Sorry, Jacques Polge. It's amazing that this came out in 1955, Pour Monsieur, right? And the Eau de Toilette Concentré came out in 89. Look at the gap between these fragrances, right? And I said, you know, Chanel usually doesn't do flankers right away. Now we've got 81 to 85. But they instantly discontinued this, which is very un-Chanel-like. That's not a move that Chanel makes very much. And so I think the fact that maybe a fresher version of Antaeus didn't sell well, I think they kind of maybe took some notes, they learned, and you don't see them make this mistake again. They didn't put out anything that just got discontinued. That's not Chanel's way. Chanel has a strategy, and they use fantastic ingredients, and they stick to it. And so seeing them make a move like this, and then, you know, it's like putting their hand on, you know, putting their hand on the table, showing their cards, and then changing their mind. They never do that, ever. And so it's really interesting to see something like that take place. It was also interesting to see the bottle, because the bottle is almost identical. There is no difference. I mean, almost zero difference. And in the 80s, you know, and maybe even for most people, I would think that you could easily confuse somebody today if you put a bottle of Antaeus in front of them and it said Sport Cologne on the back, and they just looked at it and saw Antaeus, EDT, okay, it's Antaeus. They would actually have to flip it over on the back and see Sport Cologne, and it's like a sticker that they put on. So I think they learned a lot about, you know, designing, marketing flankers by this little misstep. But for me, who somebody is not going to try to buy this and sell it for triple the price in a couple years, this is going to stay in my collection, and it is not going anywhere. This is a gem. And I'm so glad that I got a chance to do this video, because it was just sitting in my box. Rich Mitch sent me a bunch of samples. There's probably 7 others I haven't even tried. But, you know, it was so good that I really had to do this video. I wanted to do it for you guys. I wanted to show you the differences. I know it's almost impossible to get. I'm talking about a unicorn. But it's a very rare beast that you do not find in the wild very often. But I will tell you, if you have tastes like mine, don't hesitate. If you see a bottle, do not hesitate. Just do it, grab it. It will be a centerpiece of your collection. I am going to wear the piss out of this in the summer. And it's always summer in Texas, so I want to wear this all the time. This could even be a signature scent for me if I had such a thing. It's that good. I usually don't get blown away. You know, it takes a lot to blow me away. And this is special stuff. You know, and this Varanus guy said something interesting. He said that because of the way that they kind of finagled the fragrance, that instead of the castoreum note being toned down, it almost feels like it's more detectable, because there's not that myrrh acting like almost like a shield to the castoreum. You just get this very smooth but definitely animalic castoreum. It's so good. I love them both. I mean, literally, I'm in heaven wearing these 2 fragrances today. This is the kind of stuff that I love to wear. And so it is, it's a unicorn. It's a rare beast. It's a sport version of Antaeus, which sounds like almost it's almost like Encre Noir Sport. Like, what fragrance does not deserve a sport flanker more than Encre Noir? And they created it, and it's fantastic. I would say the exact same thing about this Chanel Antaeus. No way would you ever think Antaeus deserves a sport flanker. And they made an amazing fragrance. It's just a shame that they didn't stick to their guns and just say, hey, we're Chanel, we think this works, and that's that. And sell or not sell, we're going to keep creating it. But it did get discontinued. It's a rare beast. If you can find it and you have my taste, do not hesitate. This stuff is absolutely amazing. So I hope you appreciated this. If you have any experience with Antaeus Sport, or even the original Antaeus, do let me know. I love hearing your thoughts. I love seeing your faces in the comments. Subscribe or don't subscribe. Leave a comment, or leave a thumbs up or don't leave a thumbs up. You know, I would never ask that, although it does help the channel if you want to help people like me get some recognition over maybe some of the other YouTube reviewers that don't actually love fragrances as much as somebody like me does. Then a thumbs up and a like helps. But again, it's completely up to your discretion is the way that I would view it. And I'll give you a sneak peek tomorrow's video is going to be a first impression, and it's going to be another Xerjoff because I saw there was a very big channel, I'm not going to say who, that actually put Symphonium as the #2 best Xerjoff fragrance of all time, and I absolutely trashed that fragrance. Go watch my first impression review. Even if you just want to chuckle or two, go watch that, first impressions. So the one that got put #1, we're going to do a first impression of tomorrow, and I'm going to see. I have a feeling it's going to be better because it can't be worse. Symphonium is one of the worst things I've ever smelled, and so we're going to see if we go 2 for 2, or if there actually is a good Xerjoff fragrance out there. And since it got put #1 on this very popular YouTube reviewers list, I have to give it a full wear and see what I think. And I've got some decants, so we might as well give it a try tomorrow. But that's a sneak peek for tomorrow. If you have anything to say about Antaeus Sport, do let me know in the comments. I love interacting with you guys. Thank you so much for spending some of your day with me and watching. And I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye, guys.